Hey everyone, before we jump into today's story, I have a quick request. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, helps support the channel, and ensures you won't miss any of our amazing upcoming videos. Alright, let's get started. My husband left me during cancer treatment. 4 years later, he came back, not knowing I'd moved on with the ex he was always jealous of. 5 years ago, I married Jerry, the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. A year later, during one of the hardest times of my life, he left me. At the time, we were both 25 and had been dating for 3 years before deciding to tie the knot. Our relationship seemed solid, and marriage felt like the obvious next step. But just 4 months after our wedding, my life took an unexpected turn when I was diagnosed with stage 2 cervical cancer. For months leading up to the diagnosis, I had been feeling unwell, but we chalked it up to stress and minor illnesses. When the symptoms worsened, I was diagnosed, and everything changed. Suddenly, my life revolved around hospital visits, treatments, and the fight for my health. At first, Jerry was my greatest support. He was attentive, handled my medical appointments, and even shaved his head in solidarity when I lost my hair during chemotherapy. It felt like he was fully committed to standing by me. But as the months dragged on and my condition showed no improvement, his attitude shifted. The treatments weren't working, my health continued to decline, and Jerry started pulling away. He became distant, emotionally shutting me out. I tried to reach him, to talk through what we were both going through, but he wouldn't open up. Desperate for his attention, I started picking fights, hoping it would reignite some kind of connection, but it only pushed him further away. 2 weeks before our 1-year wedding anniversary, I woke up to find him gone. He left nothing but a note on the bedside table, asking me not to look for him because he didn't want to be found. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke, but when I tried calling him, I realized he had blocked me on every platform. Frantic, I reached out to his parents, but they claimed they had no idea where he was. My parents moved in with me to help during his absence, assuming he'd return in a few days. But he never did. A month later, his parents showed up at my door, not to offer support, but to serve me with divorce papers. They revealed they had been in touch with Jerry and told me he wanted nothing more to do with me. He didn't want to waste his life on someone who was sick. Those words cut deeper than anything else. I understood that my illness had been hard on him, but his decision to leave without even a conversation felt like a betrayal of everything we had shared. After 3 years of being together and 1 year of marriage, the least he owed me was honesty, but he didn't think I was worth that. Heartbroken and emotionally drained, I signed the divorce papers without resistance. By then, it was clear there was nothing left to fight for. We had no shared assets, and the uncontested divorce went through quickly. The entire process was handled by lawyers, and I never saw or spoke to him again. Even his parents disappeared after the papers were finalized. The heartbreak took a toll on my already fragile health. My parents tried to stay strong for me, but I knew it was hard for them to watch me suffer. I felt like giving up, but for their sake, I decided to keep fighting. Slowly, whether it was a mental shift or the treatment finally taking effect, I started to recover. Over time, I regained my strength and began rebuilding my life piece by piece. Looking back, I see Jerry's abandonment as a painful but defining moment in my life. It taught me resilience and self-worth. Today, I'm healthy and moving forward, determined to live life on my own terms. While his betrayal left scars, it also gave me the clarity to value myself and never settle for less than I deserve. For the past 4 years, I've been cancer-free, and every day, I've tried to embrace gratitude for my second chance at life. Part of that meant opening myself up to the idea of love again, which is why, 6 months ago, I agreed to let my ex-boyfriend Andy move in with me. Andy and I met in college and dated for 2 years before breaking up after graduation because we wanted different things in life. We stayed friends for a while, but when I started dating Jerry, who was also part of our college friend group, I phased Andy out of my life. Jerry's insecurities about Andy made me cut ties completely, even though I knew it hurt Andy. I prioritized my relationship with Jerry, and eventually, we got married. After Jerry left me during my cancer battle, Andy reached out about 5 months after the divorce was finalized. In a kind and heartfelt email, he expressed his sympathy for everything I was going through and said he wanted to reconnect as friends if I was comfortable. At the time, I was too emotionally raw to respond, but I thought about his message often. It wasn't until 10 months later, when I had made peace with Jerry's departure, that I finally replied. What started as a platonic exchange quickly grew into a close friendship. Talking to Andy again reminded me of the bond we once shared, and my parents, who noticed how much happier I seemed, encouraged me to keep that connection alive. Over time, Andy and I grew closer. He began visiting regularly, and eventually, he admitted that he had never stopped loving me. He confessed how heartbreaking it had been to watch me move on with Jerry but said he stayed away because he wanted me to be happy. Now that we were back in each other's lives, he felt it was time to tell me the truth. Though I appreciated his honesty, I was conflicted. It had been 3 years since my divorce, but my unresolved feelings about Jerry left me hesitant to move forward. However, my friends and family reminded me that Jerry had chosen to leave and that I deserved to be with someone who truly valued me. Having fought for my life once, I realized I couldn't keep living in the past. A couple of weeks later, I decided to give Andy another chance. A few months after we rekindled our relationship, Andy asked if he could move in to help take care of me. Since he was already spending most of his time at my house, my parents and I agreed it made sense. After Andy moved in, my parents were able to take some time for themselves, though they still visit regularly. Living with Andy has been wonderful. He's supportive, caring, and understanding, and I truly love having him around. While I'm not ready for a second marriage yet, Andy and I have discussed the idea and might consider it in the future. For now, I'm just grateful for the love and stability he's brought into my life. For the past couple of months, I've been content, grateful to be cancer-free and living a happy life with Andy, who loves me as much as I love him. Everything seemed perfect until earlier this week when Jerry, my ex-husband, unexpectedly reached out. After unblocking me on all platforms, he sent me a message on Facebook, apologizing for how he had treated me during my illness. He admitted to being a coward, leaving without explanation, and claimed he wanted to make amends. Jerry said he missed me terribly over the past 4 years and wanted to give our marriage another chance. He insisted he was ready to take care of me for the rest of his life if that's what it took. His message infuriated me. It was clear he assumed I was still struggling with cancer and believed I'd welcome him back with open arms. The arrogance of his assumption, after abandoning me during one of the worst times of my life, was insulting. Fueled by anger, I decided to invite him over, not to reconcile, but to show him the life I'd rebuilt without him. He had no idea I was with Andy, as I've always kept my personal life private. When Jerry arrived at my house with flowers and chocolates, I immediately called Andy to the door. Calmly, I thanked Jerry for his apology but told him I'd moved on and didn't want him back. Predictably, Jerry lost his composure. Seeing Andy, his long-standing source of insecurity, only made things worse. He accused me of betrayal and even suggested I'd been unfaithful during our marriage, a baseless claim, considering I hadn't seen Andy until long after Jerry abandoned me. I didn't argue or try to explain. Once I delivered my message, I shut the door, leaving him to deal with his outburst alone. While Andy understood my actions, my parents and friends were less supportive. They felt my actions were petty and unnecessary, believing I had invited toxicity into my life by engaging with Jerry at all. Looking back, I realized they're right. I acted out of spite and could have avoided the drama entirely by ignoring Jerry's message. Now, Jerry's parents are vilifying me, claiming I toyed with his emotions and worsened his mental health. They've even accused me of having an affair with Andy all along, a ridiculous accusation given the circumstances. Their attempts to make me the villain are ironic, considering how Jerry treated me when I needed him most and how they stood by him silently. I don't regret standing up for myself or showing Jerry that I've moved on, but I do recognize that my actions were impulsive and unnecessary. While it wasn't the most mature way to handle things, it gave me a sense of closure I didn't realize I needed. I've acknowledged my pettiness, but I don't believe I owe Jerry or his family any apologies. They have no right to demand forgiveness when they never showed any remorse for the way they treated me. My parents and friends didn't have much to say about the situation. We decided not to dwell on it because it wasn't worth the energy. To clarify, they weren't insisting I apologize to Jerry or anything. They simply expressed their disagreement with my actions and left it at that. There was no guilt-tripping or drama on their part, unlike Jerry's parents. We've agreed to disagree, and nothing in our relationship has changed, we're fine. The real issue now is with Jerry's parents. They are furious, accusing me of emotionally torturing their son by inviting him over and claiming I owe him a huge apology. They've sent me multiple emails insisting I meet Jerry in person to explain myself and assure him I wasn't involved with Andy while we were married. It's absurd, especially given how little contact we've had since the divorce. Back then, they supported Jerry's decision to leave without a word and helped him avoid me during the divorce. Now, when it's Jerry's mental health at stake, they suddenly expect me to offer explanations and closure. Earlier today, Jerry and his parents showed up unannounced at my house, assuming Andy wouldn't be home in the morning. When I opened the door, they demanded I speak to Jerry and explain myself, claiming he was confused and struggling. I rolled my eyes and told them I owed them nothing. Jerry had no problem walking away without a word when he left me, and I wasn't going to indulge him now. When I made it clear I wasn't going to entertain their demands and told them to leave or I'd call the cops, Jerry started screaming at me. He called me petty, selfish, and a horrible person. His yelling drew Andy to my side, visibly angry but holding back. To avoid escalation, I calmly took out my phone and began dialing. That finally got them to leave, though not without more cursing and insults. Andy later told me he had recorded the entire incident on his phone. While there isn't much video, we have a full audio recording of Jerry's outburst. If they show up again, we're ready to press charges and file for a restraining order. We're done tolerating their behavior. I sincerely hope I won't have to deal with Jerry and his parents again. Thankfully, it seems like that might be the case. A few days have passed since they showed up at my house, and there's been no further contact from them, which has been a huge relief. I spoke to some friends about what happened, and while they agreed Jerry and his parents' behavior was extreme, they felt what I did was unnecessary and petty. They suggested I consult a lawyer just in case, but it seems that won't be necessary. Last night, I received an email from Jerry explaining everything and saying goodbye. In the email, Jerry admitted he had moved to California after leaving me because of a new job he'd applied for while we were still together. He didn't tell me at the time because he knew I couldn't relocate due to my health, and he didn't want to face the guilt of abandoning me while I was fighting for my life. He admitted he was a coward, choosing to leave to avoid confrontation. Over the past 4 years, he'd had some flings but was never able to move on fully because of the regret he felt about our marriage. Recently, he applied for a job in Europe and had returned to convince his parents to move with him for a fresh start. That's when he decided to reach out to me, hoping to apologize and possibly rekindle our relationship. But seeing me with Andy made him realize he had no right to intrude on my life, especially after everything he put me through. He acknowledged his behavior was wrong, including sending his parents after me and throwing tantrums. In the email, he apologized for his actions, admitted his faults, and promised to leave me alone. He didn't expect forgiveness, knowing it was too little, too late, but he wanted to make amends in the only way he could now. He also recognized that Andy truly loved me and I was happy, so he resolved to stay away for good. I didn't respond to his email but shared it with Andy, my friends, and my parents. They all agreed it was enough to bring closure to this chapter of my life, and I feel the same. Now, I can finally move on. In a few months, I plan to marry Andy and start a new chapter with him. I've found the closure I needed, and I'm ready to embrace a future filled with love, family, and living life to the fullest.